Hello, everyone. This is David Paul Cercone from Pittsburgh. Today is the 20th anniversary of one of the worst days that I remember in our country's history, and that was 9/11. Today is 9/11 2021. As my family knows, I was actually on Long Island when the attacks occurred. And we were in the process of drilling, monitoring wells for the U.S. Navy and on Long Island because they had a contamination plume in groundwater. When the day started, it was a beautiful day. I recall talking outside with one of the county cops. We were actually, the naval base had been turned into a parking facility for impounded cars for the county. I believe it was Nassau County. And when we were out there, we were both saying how beautiful the day was in New York and how clear it was. And we went back into the office part of the complex, and the police had a television in their office. Our office was right next to the police officers. And all of a sudden, our drilling crew came in, and the lead driller said to us, the World Trade Center has been struck by an airplane. And so immediately we turned on the television in the police office. It wasn't a very good picture. It was kind of grainy because it was over-the-air transmission at the time. And they showed the video replay. And I recalled the day before that Al-Qaeda had killed the leader of the Northern Resistance in Afghanistan. And I immediately told the police officers, I said, this is Osama bin Laden. This is a terrorist attack. And it's basically a continuation of what they had done earlier in the mid-90s at the World Trade Center. And the police were kind of surprised that, I reached that conclusion. And then, ironically, we just then, a couple minutes later, if even a couple minutes later, the second plane hit the other tower. And at that point, everyone knew. They, in the office, all the drillers, the police officers, our contractors, it was, yeah, this is terrorism. What's next? The thought was, what is next? They have chemical weapons. They have biological weapons in those planes. We're in close proximity to the World Trade Center here. I told the crew, I said, we really don't know. There's too many unknowns. It is not smart for us to just go about business as usual today. I said, why don't we get cover in case there's a chemical or a biological or, God forbid, a nuclear sort of attack following this. So we stayed undercover at the office building at the former Navy base near Bethpage, New York. And we sat there and we watched the events unfold up to the point at which the towers collapsed. And then we had also seen in that period of time the Pentagon get hit by the plane, and we saw the other plane outside of Pittsburgh in Shanksville. We heard that story as well. That was actually a bit concerning because my sister-in-law at the time worked in downtown Pittsburgh, and the reports came in that this plane had circled around Pittsburgh, this unaccounted for plane. And I don't understand. I guess they had a way of determining that this plane wasn't responding to the air traffic controllers. I don't know. But then we found out later that the plane actually uh, got taken over by the passengers and who overpowered the hijackers and drove the plane into the field in Shanksville. But there was a lot of concern because, we had a lot of friends in the downtown Pittsburgh area working in the office buildings. So there was a lot to process mentally. A lot of things were going on. It was chaotic. And after most of these events came to a conclusion, and we felt as if there wasn't another impending attack that's going to hit us in New York, we really weren't sure. I told the crews, okay, guys, I think it's best that we get away from this, police facility and also a Navy facility because, we're not sure the magnitude of what this attack's going to be like, and they could be coming after facilities like ours. So we actually retreated back to our hotel rooms later in the morning and continued to watch the events unfold and learn what was going on. At the same time, I was looking out my hotel window, and my hotel had been right along the Long Island Expressway, and there were fire trucks from as far as the Hamptons coming in through the expressway towards New York City. And I've never had seen anything like that before. And I called the county response part people, and I said, look, I am an experienced hazardous waste technician. I have experience on contaminated sites and breathing apparatus, protective equipment, things of that nature. I said, can I be of assistance in any way down in the city? Because I have my PPE with me. I have breathing apparatus. I have PPE. And they said, are you a welder? I said, no, I'm not a welder. And they says, well, we want everyone who is not a welder to stay away from the site. And I felt as if, I was, not having my skills utilized, but I listened to the county people, and I didn't go down to the city to what I think would have been useful services. At the time, I didn't really know the magnitude of what the disaster was, but I felt like this could have helped, but it never happened. At the same time that this was all going on, I knew we had people coming in from my office in Pittsburgh coming to the site. The project manager was coming in. I think he was flying into LaGuardia, and probably around at that point 9:20, I called the office and I said, if you can get a hold of the project manager, was Dave Brayak. I said, tell Dave not to get on a plane. And I found out later that Dave never did get on the plane. And so obviously other people were thinking about the fallout from what was going down that day. We went back to the hotel. After a while, I think our anxiety level dropped, but it was still very high. And I spoke with our drilling crew. I like staying with the drilling crews at the same hotel, even though they don't typically stay at the best hotels. I like to know what's going on in my jobs, and sometimes, we'll say they don't necessarily behave like office professionals behave. especially during off hours. So that's why I like to stay near the drillers. They were thinking that I was over exaggerating things at the time. And, you know, they went back to their rooms and I hung up on myself. That evening, I got out in the rental car and I knew there had been parking areas along the Long Island Railroad, and I wanted to see if there were blood banks, receiving donations, and I wanted to give blood. And the place, unlike typical New York night, was eerily inactive after all the emergency vehicles had, gone to their destinations, and probably most of them came back to Long Island. But the thing that stood out in my mind was later in that evening, there are a number of parking lots for Long Island Railroad where people who commute into the city go. And those parking lots typically were very empty at that point into the evening, when it was still light out later because it was kind of the end of the summer. And there were way too many cars in that parking lot that night. And the thought ran through my mind. I said, these people, these cars belong to people who were either killed today or in some way had their lives seriously impacted, that they never came back to get their cars today. And that's what sticks with me as part of my 9/11 story. Later in the week, I think there was a push to get the economy not stopped. And so Wall Street, I think, which is right near ground zero, I think they were trying to get those people back and on their jobs, which I thought was a little bit ridiculous myself. And the EPA indicated that the conditions around the site were not going to be harmful to the people. And I said to myself, as an environmental professional and someone who deals with PPE, this is the second time in my life that I have overtly seen government officials lying to people. The first was when Richard Nixon lied to us when I was a little kid on national TV. And I remember that event as well pretty clearly. And it ever since has made me skeptical of government. That being the case, I felt like just calling people in government saying, you can't say things like this. It's basically evil. You're putting these people in danger. And I think that was bore out through time here, where a lot of these first responders who were on the pile were subject to really nasty diseases and cancers. When I went home at the end of that week, we actually, I think, took the next day off. It was, I don't know if we took Wednesday off totally, but the one thing that was eerie about that week is in New York, there are so many planes that fly over wherever you are. There are contrails literally everywhere in the sky. And I looked up and I didn't see any contrails. And you never notice an individual plane, but I think it was Thursday. Maybe it was Thursday afternoon. One plane flew over the site where we were drilling. And we have a drill rig making super loud noises. The drillers are doing their thing. And we all stopped in spite of all the noise. And we saw this lone plane flying across the sky, making its own individual contrail. And it was just so odd. It's New York City. You have contrails everywhere, but we just stopped working until the plane flew out of sight, and we just stared at it, mesmerized by an airplane, like probably the first man who had ever seen an airplane stood in amazement looking at it flying through the air almost. But my airline ticket had been canceled, and I had a rental car. The rental car is based out of LaGuardia. And I called the rental car company. I said, look, I have to get back to my home in Pittsburgh. I want to use the car to get back home. And that's what's going to occur. So I determined which way I wanted to go. And I had this need to see what the Twin Tower site looked like. And I figured by Friday, things would be calmed down. There wouldn't be much to see. I went down the Brooklyn Queens Expressway on my way home. And that was not the case at all. All these days later, there was still smoke billowing up from the site coming across the river. And I stopped the car. I got off the exit. I'm not sure where exactly, but it was right across the river from the trade center. And I remember the smell. It was very distinct. Having been an environmental geologist, you get to encounter a lot of strange smells when you drill through these old environmental disasters like landfills and chemical waste plants. And what the smell was like was a combination of burning wires and landfill stench when you drill through it, all mixed together in this awful, hideous aroma that was, even for Friday, was quite powerful. So at that point, I said this was not a situation those professionals should have been in all these days, during and after the attacks. My mind at that time, the whole time, was on my wife and kids back in Pittsburgh. I still have this mental image of my son and daughter at the front door, looking out the front door window at me, and being very happy that I was home. And that's really not the way, I don't think, it happened when I came home. I'm not sure, because the fictional story in my mind probably trumped the real story in my mind. But that was my 9/11 experience for that day.